Welcome to Process Management for Total Beginners. Today we are learning the legal server lingo. I am Kaitlin Tharp. Here's what you can expect. After today's session, you will know what a process is, what a form is, what a field, and what lookups are, and what to do with them. You'll know when and where to create all of those different elements I just mentioned, processes, forms, fields, and lookups. And you'll feel more confident in legal server terminology and some basic navigation as an administrator in legal server. The first thing we're going to talk about is our fields. Fields are your basic data points. On this slide, you can see an example I have here. There are several different types of fields that we see here. Things like current living situation, which would be a drop down if I click that arrow and I would see a list of options for that current living situation. You can also see some examples below that are yes, no. These are Boolean fields. So, like this migrant or veteran field. These are very common types of fields you might be using in Legal Server, Boolean or lookups. Other common types of fields might be text fields or number fields or let's see, date fields. So there's lots of types of fields. These are some of the more common ones. There are a lot of system fields already built into Legal Server. Many of the ones that we see here are system ones that already exist. Migrant is a custom field. That's one I created on this site. And you can create your own custom fields on your own sites. And of course, any data that you put into Legal Server, you can pretty easily report out of Legal Server. So all of these fields that we see here, or any fields that you are collecting or creating, you can pull in a report in Legal Server. I'm going to switch over to my demo site here for a moment, and I'm just going to show you some very basic navigation here to find your fields in Legal Server. So as an administrator, you'll see this admin tab at the top of the screen. We'll click admin. And in this keyword box, we can type field. And what we see here are system field management and custom field management. System field management will be all those system fields that already exist in Legal Server. You probably won't have to come here a whole lot, but it's good to know that this exists and where that is. So I'm going to go ahead and click Edit Pencil to see the system field list. If you wanted to, you can see there's 23,000 plus system fields here. If you wanted to filter them to see system fields by a particular module in Legal Server, you could click this filter icon and you can filter by the module name. And you can see the different types of modules by looking along the top navigation bar here. That's a good way to get started with that. I'm going to go back to the admin tab. And this time we're going to type field and we're going to look at this custom field management. This is where all your custom fields live, all the custom fields you already have on your site, or that if you create more, this is where they'll be. And from here, if you ever want to create a custom field, you would go to the Actions menu and create a new custom field. And I won't do that today because that'll be covered in a different session, but I just want to show you where you're going to find those processes. We'll move on to lookups are a type of field that displays a list. Like I mentioned on the previous slide, the current living situation list, that's pulling a field that's pulling a lookup list. There are system lookups in Legal Server, and again, there are custom lookups. You can create your own custom lookups. So this current living situation, for example, that already exists in Legal Server, that's a system lookup. You can modify an existing system lookup, or you can create, again, for a custom field, that you can create your own custom lookup list. Now, a lookup list is helpful because it can help you collect cleaner data. So just imagine if current living situation was a text box. You'd have your staff putting in a large variety of values for these different types of living situations. Things might be spelled incorrectly. People might just think about living situations in different ways. And so you'd have a whole lot of different values in that current living situation field, which makes reporting a little bit more difficult, especially when you have a series of values that you need to report, say, to a funder. It's really helpful to have a designated list in this case to collect and report on that data. Now I'm going to pop back over to my demo site again, and we're going to come back up to the admin tab. And this time we're going to type lookup in the keyword box. There's a lot of options here. What I'm looking for are two different lookup process management sections here, lookups and custom lookup management. We'll take a look at lookups first. This is the system lookups lists. I'll click the edit pencil, and that brings me to our lookups list. See, I have 659 system lookups in LegalServer here. I'm going to go ahead and just search for one that is familiar to us. We'll go ahead and look for living arrangement. So this living arrangement lookup is the one that we saw on this slide. You can click into it and you can see these are those living arrangement values that we saw in that slide. And you can modify the system lookup list. You can deactivate any values you don't want. You can add any new values that you would like. Let me come back here, and we're going to go back to the big admin tab up here. And this time we are going to go to the custom lookups. All right, so I'm in our custom lookup lists, and you can see that I have 13 custom lookups on my site. And these are ones that I've created, and you can create your own custom lookups. So you can see some of the examples that I have here. Some of these might be familiar to you from VOCA reporting. Maybe you need to collect an additional language that the client speaks of the case, or maybe you want to collect additional race values. So you can create custom lookups of any type here. We're going to move on to blocks. Blocks are really a closed universe of fields that have some kind of special functionality built into them. So there's some kind of development that ties those fields together usually. The example I have here on this slide is our address block. This is what the site administrator would see on the back end of a form that contains the address block. And you can see there's a lot of different configuration options available in the address block. So you can, decide which fields within the address you want to require or not require, what you want to ask or not ask for. Lots of options like that. I'm going to go back to my demo site, and I'm just going to go ahead and open up my intake so you can see what I mean when I'm talking about the address block here is these fields here that are tied to the address itself. And right, again, there's some special functionality where if I enter in the zip code, it would auto-populate the city, state, and county. And if you do that on your demo site or your live site, you can enter in any zip code and it would auto-populate that city, state, and county. I'm going to edit this form just to show you that block on the back end. So if I ever want to edit a page that I am looking at currently, I'm going to come up to this little admin button in the top right corner and click Edit Form. And here we can see there's actually lots of blocks on this page indicated by that little block symbol. And I'm going to open up this address block by clicking on that blue arrow. And this is what we saw on the slide. These are the options I have for this block. Every different block has different configuration options available for it, depending on what that block does. And there's lots of blocks in LegalServer. And a lot of the ones that you might need on a regular basis are already built into some of the processes on your site. And as you learn LegalServer and learn what you need in LegalServer, you'll be coming across a variety of blocks that'll help you build what you need to build out in LegalServer. Coming back to my slides, gonna press continue to our forms. Forms are how we collect basic sets of data. In this example, this is the back end of a form. And we can see this is actually what we just looked at in my demo site, the back end of an intake form. On this form, we can see there are lots of fields that we're collecting data in, some blocks. We can see there are some organizational elements, so headers. There's no instructions on here, but I'll show you what that is in a minute. Go ahead and come back to my demo site. And I am on the back end of a form, but I just want to show you how to get there again. So I'm going to come back to a form. I'm just going to use my intake process as an example. In my intake, I have 7 different forms, and I'm just going to go ahead and edit this first form that we're looking at right now. And I'm going to do that again by coming to admin and edit my form. And here, what we can see, again, lots of different types of elements. There's fields, there's blocks, there's instructions. Instructions will display an instruction for your front end users in a yellow box. I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like on the front end. So on the front end, you see these yellow boxes. These are instruction elements. And then headers look like this applicant contact information header here. So those are just organizational elements. So fields, blocks, instructions, and headers, those are the main types of elements that you'll use when working on a form. The next thing we're going to take a look at are processes. Processes are a way to access your forms. There are several different types of processes, including intake processes or auxiliary processes. Intake processes are what you use to enter uh, your initial client data into your case into LegalServer. Auxiliary processes are typically what you use to edit information about a case in LegalServer. Or you might use an auxiliary process to add additional information to a case while working on LegalServer. A process can have more than one form on it. I briefly referenced that when we took a look at our intake process. Our intake process on my demo site, and by default, has 7 different forms on it. You can control what forms exist on a process. You can change the order of them. You can remove forms. You can add new forms. I'm going to go back to my demo site here. I'm on the back end of my intake form here. And one just quick thing I want to show you actually first is on the front end of our intake, on the left here, you can see that we have this begin applicant intake process name, and we have the 7 different forms in this process listed below. Now, if I want to edit the form or the process, I can get there by going to admin and edit my form. That takes me to the back end of the form I'm looking at. And if I want to edit the process that this form lives on, I can see it. There's a quick link to that over here on the left. Processes using this form. And I can edit the process by clicking on that link. This takes you to the back end of the process. There are some general settings about the process at the top. There are some permissions by user role available below. And then towards the bottom, this will show you the different forms that exist on the process. Again, you can remove any forms if you don't want them. You can add any forms if you do want them. You can reorder them. You have control over that. The next thing to know about are profiles. Profiles is where you're going to view your data. So if you collect your data in an intake process, you're going to view that data from a case profile. In this slide here, we have an example of what the back end of a profile looks like. Profile elements include the flow block, which I'll show you what that is, and tab blocks. And you might also use something called list views on your profiles. All right, so I'm going to come back to my demo site and I'm going to go open up a case. So I'm coming to the cases tab and I'm going to click on a case ID here to open up a test case. And this is our profile. This is our case profile specifically. Our main profile is called in my demo site. And at the very top, we have what's called the flow block. Below that, we have a tab block. And then if I click into any of these tabs, we can see examples of list views. This is a list view. This assignment section is a list view. And this is just showing me lists of information. So in this case, contacts and assignments on the case. Now, if I want to edit the profile, I can come to the admin button here and click edit profile. And this takes us to what we saw on that slide, where we have the flow block element and we have the tab block element. And we also have just a block in the middle there, case and client alerts, which would display case or client alerts on the case if there were any. The list views I mentioned usually live inside of a tab block, and that's something that you will learn about editing in a future session. The next thing we're going to take a look at is processes, forms, and profiles as an admin. I'm calling it Admin Central here. And this is a place you can go in LegalServer to find all of your processes and forms and profiles. I'm going to show you again how to find your fields and your lookups just to tie this all together. So coming back to my demo site, I'm going to click the admin button at the very top. And you can always use this keyword box to find what you're looking for. If you're looking for processes or profiles or fields or lookups, you can always type any of those keywords in there. But if you're not quite sure what you're looking for, if you forget what to type, another thing to remember is you can always click on this process management button here on the left. And this has most of the process management items that you will need as a site administrator. These are really the most common things you'll be using. So from here, you can see the custom field management section that we looked at earlier, where you can create your own fields, the custom lookup management section, where you can create your own lookup lists. We looked at system lookups before, so that's right there. And one new thing I'm going to show you is this processes, forms, and profiles section. This is going to be a really important section for you to get familiar with as a site administrator. I'm going to click the edit button, and this will take us to the processes, forms, and profiles admin section. And this, as you can imagine, will show you your processes, forms, and profiles in LegalServer. So I'm going to use the begin applicant intake process as an example, since we are familiar with that now. In our processes tab here, if I scroll down, we can see I have this begin applicant intake process. I showed you before how to edit the process from the process itself on the front end, but if you ever want to, you can come here as well to edit the process from this processes, forms, and profiles section. So clicking this edit button takes me to that same place on the back end of the process. All your forms live in this primary forms tab. So all the intake forms we looked at, they would be here. You can see things like that applicant conflict check results and the applicant demographics. So all your forms are here. And then your profiles would live in this tab. So your main profile is your case profile. One important thing to note is that this is showing us our forms and processes specifically for the case matter module. So this is only showing us information that is tied to that case module. If you wanted to look at the processes, forms, and profiles for a different module. And again, a good way to get a sense of that is by looking at the top navigation bar and seeing what kind of data you're looking at in LegalServer. You can select a different module to see the processes, forms, and profiles for that particular module. So if you want to edit user processes, user profiles, user forms, you would switch that to user and do so here. In a future session, you'll learn more about how to actually create forms and processes and profiles in this section. But again, I just wanted to familiarize you a little bit with this section, talk about some of the language that you'll be using in this section. So it won't be too unfamiliar when you actually start building some things.